Well, good afternoon once again, all the viewers. This is Pastor Cecil Victor John with Jesus the Way the Ministries, and today's video log is a very, very special one for me. I'm going to introduce a very, very special guest today. Actually, he's not a guest. I have known him for a long time. Actually, I've known his dad from the day when we came to the U.S. and now he's the lead pastor. He's the coach as well. So I'm going to introduce him a little bit to all the audience, but then I will ask him to introduce himself and his ministry. So today I have a privilege to introduce Pastor Junior Brad Gunter, and as I said, he's the head pastor right now at Tabernacle Baptist Church. That's the school where my wife she works, and my three daughters they have all gone there. Two have already graduated. One is still there. She's graduating this year, so you're going to lose all of them, Pastor, this year. Uh, yeah, I know. So, and especially, I want to mention a little bit about his dad, Pastor Gunter. I can say only one thing about Pastor Gunter. He was a great man of God, such a lovely, uh, you know. I mean, he will do anything for you. He will go out of his way to make sure that you are taken care of. And in my case and my family's case, we came here with no family, but Pastor Gunter and his whole family, they became our family. In fact, Pastor even officiated my daughter's wedding, Grace, and that was a great moment because it was during COVID. So I can talk a lot about Pastor Gunter this morning, but I would like him to introduce to our audience. So please, Pastor, can you introduce a little bit about yourself and about the ministry?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I want to say how much we love you and your family.
We do.
Without a doubt, we're about ready to graduate this year. Your third and final daughter, and your kids are way better than you. And I love you to death. But the audience needs to know he has a great wife and he has three beautiful, great young ladies that are serving God. And by the grace of God, it's happened. But the reality is, it also takes a structure around the family. That the family is serving and loving God, and that the kids see behind the curtain that their family is serving for a reason, that they love God for a reason. And those three kids have embodied everything that I think you as parents wanted, and it's seen by the world. So I love you guys to death. So little history of me. I'm Brad Gunter Jr. I'm now the lead pastor at TBC Ministries, also known as Tabernacle Baptist Church here in Roseville, California. We also have a school on site that goes 2 years old all the way through 12th grade. That's known as Valley Christian Academy, which is why you sort of see me in VCA gear, because today we're actually in school. Um, Not only am I the lead pastor of the church, but also now administrator of the school, and I'm the athletic director. I coach varsity boys basketball and varsity baseball. You can see right now I have our baseball gear on, because as soon as I'm done with this, I'll have to go work on the field, run home and change, and then I got to coach a basketball game tonight. But sort of the brief history: my dad founded our church about 50 years ago. Actually, this year we'll be celebrating our 50th year in the ministry. 2 years after that, I entered into the first grade. I had went to kindergarten at a little church school here in town. My dad thought, that's a great idea. Let's start a school, which at the time was called Tabernacle Baptist School. Let's start a school. And so about 48 years ago, a school was started here. And the whole goal of both really was to love God and love others. And that was Dad's ultimate goal. The amazing thing is, fast forward, I went to this school from first grade all the way through graduation. I went off to college. I was like most pastors' kids. I was a little mad at God because I had saw the destruction of human beings, basically going after pastors instead of supporting pastors. And I was just a little disheartened with God. And so I went searching for everything. I was a college athlete, so I played college baseball. My whole goal was to be a college baseball coach. It wasn't come back in the ministry. But going into my final year of college, which was my fifth year, because in sports you have 5 years to play four. I took a red shirt year my first year, and then the last 4 years I played. Going in my fifth and final year, God was just knocking on my heart that I needed to come home. And so I threw my hands up in the air at that point and said, God, whatever you have in store, I'm going to keep you first, and the rest is going to be a bonus. And so I put away the things of the world. I focused on Him, and that brought me back into the ministry just to help out as a teacher in the school, as a youth pastor for, man, probably, goodness, I've been here 30 years. I was a youth pastor for probably 20 years, then stepped into assistant pastor, but really didn't have the time to be a full blown assistant that my dad needed because I was also on the school side. So it was just whatever I could do. And then, of course, my dad passed away basically 2 years ago. And the succession plan was set up that I would step into the lead role of everything. The amazing thing about that whole story is I have two other brothers, there's three sons, and all three of us are back here. We don't have to be, it's by choice. There's obviously no money in it, there's no fame in it, everything the world asks, there's nothing, but all three of us are back. My middle brother runs our office for the ministry. My younger brother is now an assistant pastor. He had a church plant for 15 years, and then he has, since my dad has passed away, he's come in to help me as an assistant pastor. He teaches in our high school, coaches softball. But the reason I bring that up is because what we saw from my dad behind the curtain, behind closed doors, was the same thing the world saw. And regardless of what we went through, when push came to shove, we all felt we needed to do what God wanted us to do. And we came back to serve God and serve others in the ministry. Excuse me. And that is a huge testament to what my dad stood for. He stood for loving God and loving others. And it was even behind closed doors that he did it. And as you know, at his memorial service, we had over 2,000 people in attendance, almost 1,000 watching online. From a little church and a little school, the impact that guy made for the kingdom of Christ is something I aspire to do. Love God, love others, and to be honest with you, be like Pops. And those are tough shoes to fill. But I have a peace understanding that through all of that, through all the tragedy, we're all going to die. I know where my dad is, and now he is a fan. He is cheering us on from heaven, and we are continuing to build on the back of what he and others before him have done. And so that's what brought me back. I know that's sort of a little long-winded, but that's what brought me back. And we have seen God just bless. God's math is different from our math. The money does not make sense around here, but God always seems to take care.
Well, thank you so much, Pastor, and I really appreciate such a great introduction what you have given about the ministry and about yourself. And since I have known you and your dad for quite a long time now, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about your dad. I mean, I met him out of nowhere. We never even knew each other, and the
Yeah.
first time when I met him in this same office, it was not as good as what you have made.
Mhm.
It was more
We
kind of,
need we needed an upgrade. He wouldn't let
yeah,
us do it while he
yeah, he
was
wouldn't,
alive.
yeah.
Yeah.
But his words were, and I'm not going to go into the details, but his words were that, Victor, okay, so I understand like what you need from us, and we haven't done for anybody, but God has, we have prayed about it, and we would love to help your family. And since that day, from that day till today, Pastor, I can tell you, you guys, I mean, your whole family and the entire church, and especially your dad, you have always
Mhm.
been there for us. Your dad, your brother Mark, your brother Nathan, and including yourself, your wife, you have always been there. I even remember when Grace was getting married, and you know what happened because it was COVID, and you
Yeah.
came to me and Sonia and my in laws, and you said, listen, we can still go ahead with the wedding as long as you guys want it. So
Mhm.
we can do it in our church. I mean, that's the biggest thing anybody can do for you at that time.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate, and I have so many memories with your dad and even with you. So I don't know what else to say, but one thing I would like to say to the audience who's going to watch this video is that your ministry, Pastor, especially what your dad started, as you said, 50 years ago, the impact it has made on so many people, and I am a living testimony. I can testify for myself. The reason we have been able to succeed in our dream, especially with my three daughters, as you know, you just talked about them, is because of your ministry. If this ministry was not there, if your family was not there, this would have never been possible, Pastor. And you know that what I'm talking about.
It's amazing, and sorry to interject, but it's amazing. My dad's goal was to be a professional baseball player. Dad was a two-sport college athlete, actually three if you count cross country, but he just did that to be in shape and he was terrible at it. But he was a two-sport college athlete. His dream was to play professional baseball. And when Dad got saved, and then moved, here to Sacramento area to go to seminary, that decision to follow Christ impacted a ton. And in the last few years of my dad's life, I was taking him to doctor's appointments, and there were a couple occasions where Dad was in the passenger seat of my truck crying. And I'm like, Dad, what's going on? And he goes, I feel like I didn't do enough for Christ. And I'm like, and this
That,
is where we fight
that's
off the allergy attacks. And I'm like,
that's that's not
he
true.
it's like, the church isn't at 10,000 people. The school's not, at 1,000 students. And he's like, I don't feel like I did enough. And the reality is it wasn't about the numbers. He just felt he hadn't done enough. And I said, Dad, what God used you for at different times of your life, God used you to just be where your feet are. And if you're where your feet are serving Him, you leave the rest to God. And I said, you don't understand, Dad, and you probably won't until you're looking down from heaven, the impact you made for the kingdom of God just by being present every day and working. And it really, I've been saying for years, Him first and the rest is a bonus. Talking about God first and the rest is a bonus. I've said it trying to get my alumni and people to understand that, the world's not going to give you what you want. But if you put Christ first, everything else that comes, good or bad or indifferent, it is really a bonus. And when I was talking to my dad in the last years of his life, Dad, the impact just because you did what God told you. And we saw it. We saw it as memorial service. We saw it. We see it in our alumni. We see it in our church members, and we continue to see it for a guy that all he did was answer the call to serve God. That's all he did. And it might not be big. Like I said, I'm more impressed with the pastors that have a congregation of 50 and show up every Sunday than I am the congregations of 10,000. Now, it doesn't mean the congregations of 10,000 can't have an impact. They can have a bigger, quicker impact than a lot of us can. But I value more the pastors that just show up to serve God every day because I see the impact and what God can do through it. And I saw it through my dad. And the impact that he left and a mark for the kingdom is insurmountable. Insurmountable.
Well, if he was alive today, I would have told him that, Pastor, I mean, you shouldn't be saying that because the impact and the amount of work which you have done is incredible. It's not just here inside the US, but you have impacted life outside US. I know you
Yeah.
have a lot of international students coming in from China. I
Yeah.
mean, we came, my family, my wife, my daughters, we came from South Korea. So there
Yeah.
you go, right? So, and it's global. So, and as I said, I mean, he was such a loving guy and always trying to
Well,
help out.
exactly. And as you were talking about our international students in our school, my dad, early in the ministry, he always brought up an author that he absolutely loved, a pastor called Watchman Nee out of China that did, was underground churches all throughout China. And he always looked at that as a mark of a guy just making a dent for the kingdom. And in those last 2 years, when I was talking to Dad, I said, Dad, do you understand that because of our school that you started, all those years ago, China is sending students to our school?
Well, there you go.
You're having an impact that
Yes.
that we've had kids from China come here, get saved, go back and live their testimony inside of that country. And as you know, we have Laos and France and Vietnam and a ton of other countries. Right now, we have students from the Ivory Coast and Switzerland, and we're able to share the gospel with those people. And I'm like, Dad, you've went international with the kingdom mission. It's unbelievable what God has done.
Yes. So before we go on to our topic, Pastor, I just wanna, because since I know a lot and I've been there, and you mentioned 50 years, especially with your dad. What is the most difficult thing has been for you as a ministry to overcome over these 50 years, Pastor?
Yeah,
I
well,
mean, your
that's a
dad
good
loss
one.
is of course the biggest, but other
Yeah,
than that,
no, no, exactly. I'm gonna just, you've known me, I'm blunt. I always have been. I'm straight to the truth. I'm just gonna put God first in everything I do, and the rest is a bonus. The toughest thing in ministry, honestly, throughout 50 years has been, if I could just be blunt, people suck. I'm just gonna be blunt. It's people. Now we're supposed to be dealing with people. That's what we're doing. But the problem is people, they get their eyes off Christ and they start worrying about what the world, and instead of following what the scriptures say about loving God and loving others, let's just take the COVID time that we had. That time, instead of us taking a time and moment inside of the church to really focus on Christ, to bond with our families. I During the COVID era, there was 2 weeks where we couldn't be anywhere, and I had to be at home for 2 weeks. That was the rule. We didn't know whether we were going to die going outside or not. During that 2 weeks, I pursued my wife. Like, this was the first time in all those years that I had a time where I didn't have to be to a baseball game, a basketball game, a class, or whatever. So I looked at those 2 weeks that we had to be home as an opportunity to just focus on my marriage. We would order pizza, have it in bed, and just watch shows, following what the Bible says to me being a great husband, pursuing my wife. And I had realized over the years, and this is sort of what COVID time did, I'd realized sometimes the coaching sports or other people that I was counseling or other things sort of became a little bit of a priority in my marriage. And I realized during that time, you know what? This is the time I'm going to get closer to my wife. I'm going to pursue my wife. And since that time, we've been closer than ever. But during that time, people didn't use that to get closer to their spouses or closer to their kids. They took a political stance. Now, it's okay. We're in America. You can take a political stance. I have political stances. That's my thing I can do as a United States citizen. Don't take my guns away. I'm a pro Second Amendment guy. But that has nothing to do with my service to Christ. And during that time was probably the toughest time, both school and ministry wise, because now everybody started having a political focus versus a Christ focus. And then coming out of that has been, you have opinions versus, no, let's get closer to Christ, not because of what he's going to do for us, but what he already did for us. And so really over the years of watching my dad being a pastor, it really comes down to the toughest part of ministry is getting people to understand what Christ did for us and to follow through every day in their life. And if you could take people out of serving God, it would be much easier. But the reality is we're supposed to disciple, we're supposed to mentor, we're supposed to get them closer to Christ. But yeah, that has been probably the toughest thing. There's money issues and infrastructure things, and there's all that, but you sort of rely on God to get through all that, because without him, I don't know how we've existed 50 years. But really, the toughest thing has been dealing with people. And I really understand that's a funny statement that a lot of pastors won't make, but I'm pretty open about it. Let's put God first. The rest is going to be a bonus, and we can deal with whatever comes our way.
No, I agree with you 100%, Pastor. And the reason why I agree with you is because you talked about people. And let's be honest, the problem is as soon as troubles come or difficulties come, instead of blaming themselves or their own decisions, they start blaming others. They start blaming the pastor. They start blaming the deacons, the elders, church members, because they think, oh, because of them, they didn't tell me the right thing, right?
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. Pastor is the first one who's going to be in the line of fire, because they'll blame the pastor for all their failures.
Yeah, and I want to add to that. So behind the story, my family's been an open book forever. I'm okay to say this, but years ago. When I was a junior in high school, my mom basically had things that had happened to her when she was a little kid, trauma that, people go through. My mom had trauma. And because of that, my mom needed help mentally. She needed psychological help. And we had people, going back to that, people are tough to deal with. We had people that held the trauma in which my mom dealt with when she was little and needed help for. We had people use that against my dad. And at the time, we had a church split because they felt my dad needed to step aside. And my dad hadn't done anything wrong. My mom hadn't done anything wrong. This was stuff that happened to my mom that came about when I was a junior in high school. She had flashbacks, and all of a sudden she needs therapy. And now you sort of understand why I ran from God a little bit in my college years. And at that time, I couldn't foresee what's God doing with this trauma. Why would God allow this to happen? Number one, to my mom when she was young, and still go through it mentally even to this day. But why in the world would God allow this to happen to my dad, a pastor, somebody that's leading people spiritually? And at the time when I ran from God and I'm like, I'm out, I'm going to pursue the things of the world. By my senior year of college, my 5th year, is when I threw my hands up and said, God, I'm all in, regardless of the situation, him first and the rest of the bonus. I was really saying, regardless of the circumstances, that people or judgment, because what what Christians were doing was, Pastor, you can't keep your house in order. Because you can't keep your house in order, you can't lead. And at that time, here's the amazing thing. At that time, I came back to VCA 30 years ago. At that time, we're a little small Christian school. We're still small, but no impact. But I came back and I used the talents in which God gave me. Number one, serve God, number one. Number two, I started coaching baseball here. In 30 years, we've sent out over 70 guys to the next level. We've had guys in the pros. We even have a guy right now that's an ESPN reporter in Miami that covers the Miami Dolphins. But the reason I say all this is because the church never really could get big, because there would always be questions, Pastor, where's your wife? Well, my wife's struggling with the things of her past. That's what my dad would have to say. But what happened is God used the school as a ministry to continue to love God and love others. So now all of a sudden, out of this ministry, our church is the top, but out of this ministry became the school that, as we discussed, went international, became big inside of the community. All of a sudden, we had pastors' kids going to I think last year we had 12 different pastors that had their kids in our school. Now we became a safe haven, a school that understands pastors' kids, obviously, for other ministries. And that's what I was going back a couple of years ago before Dad passed away. As I was saying, Dad, look, God had a plan the entire time. All of a sudden, okay, you had questions behind the scenes because what Mom was dealing with, but you couldn't say that about the school. And so God pivoted and is like, you know what? We're going to be even a bigger impact that our church might not have, but our ministry will have. And now it's gone international. Now our alumni and everything. And the whole time, I tell our church all the time, Romans 8:28, God's always in play and he's always at work, even when you don't think things are going very well. And that for me shows that even though people can be bad sometimes and people can lose focus, God's always at work as long as you're doing what you're supposed to, because the end of that verse comes in play.
Well, I can only add to that a little bit, Pastor, is that people even criticize Jesus Christ, even though he had done nothing. So me and you, we have nowhere to stand in front of the people. People are always
100%.
going to criticize us. They're always going to say bad things about us. But as you
Yeah,
said, we put God first, and rest is the bonus, right?
absolutely.
So we're going to come to our topic, which we're going to discuss today. Our session is almost, because it's almost like 25 minutes. So
Yeah.
we'll take a short break, like maybe a minute, and then we'll go on to our topic. But let me introduce the topic before we go on to our second session. So what we just discussed, so that now brings us to, Pastor, what we look around us today. Inside the US, we have chaos almost everywhere. What is going on? This morning I was watching the news. I usually don't watch it, but I saw what is happening in Chicago. There was a big raid done. Lots of some drugs were discovered and so on. We know what is going on in Venezuela just a few days ago, Ukraine and so on. So, and people are talking about peace. But we know that there is only one piece, right? And that's what we're going to discuss. So before we go on to our second session, can you just briefly tell us what kind of peace we need, Pastor?
I'll tell you what, if you're looking for the world to provide peace, you're never going to find it. The Bible talks about there is a peace that passes all understanding. In other words, when the chaos hits and everybody's frazzled, there's a peace that comes over you. And when we get back from the break, I'll explain in my life in the last 2 years how much chaos has happened. And the only reason I can explain the peace is through Christ.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come. I still have with me Pastor Junior Brad Gunter, and we're going to talk about peace in Jesus Christ. So stay with us.